reinforce the message. False advertising leads the public to believe that that business is actually in that building where that sign is being advertised. It's not fair in all cases. If that sign maxes out, my business may not be able to advertise on it where others have that opportunity. So, I mean, that's why I think most municipalities frown on it in urban centers. So if we were to go forward, that I would not be in support of this one.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? Councillor Vandendolen.
Well, as I said a few weeks ago, I still support this. I don't think we really have any right to tell people who can advertise and who can't. And as for opening the floodgates, there are very few buildings that have the characteristics of this one with a big blank space on the side. If nobody's going to cover over their windows for a sign, and we can easily prohibit that anyway. As for the fact that it's third party, so what? As to the fact that it'll make a profit, well, good. That's what we want these business people to do. So I don't see that as any reason to oppose it. And I say on a test case, let the guy do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not all the way in or out on either side on this right now. I agree with what Councillor Bondi was saying with regard to, we've done the streetscape. We're trying to establish what it is that we want. We're going to have signage that, there's not going to be a hard and fast rule, but there's going to be a look that we're going for. There's going to be a feel, the different textures that we'll want to use on buildings and things. And to just give a carte blanche, because what we heard last meeting was, it's not necessarily going to be the sign that we're looking at now. It may actually be 3 pieces long. It'll go right from the front to that first window. To me, which is a giant billboard. So I spent some time looking in towns, looking at pictures of different places that end up with these, and it's very hard to control. And as far as controllable, I think it is important that if we're going to do something like this where each layer, like he's got it set that there's shingles with the different businesses, I don't know how you stop them, 4 shingles going to one business and the different colors. I just think right now, as we're trying to do our streetscape, as we're trying to put a plan together for Harrow, I'm not against this 100%, but right now at this moment, I wouldn't want to pass it because I want to see the full picture of what we're trying to do in Harrow and how this will affect any other buildings moving forward. So I would suggest holding off on it, getting our plans together, and then revisiting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors? So what's going to be our pleasure here tonight? Councillor Bjorkman.
I make a motion that we, I'm always one with those words. What's the right word? Postpone indefinitely this conversation and bring it back until after we're done with the streetscape and we put a plan together.
Thank you. A seconder for that, Councillor Vandendolen. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
On the agenda this evening is Economic Development Report 2019-05 Essex Tourism Events Fund application for receipt, and that council approves the distribution of $1,000 of funding for one tourism event funds applicant, namely the Explore the Shore Committee.
Have a mover, please. Seconder. Councillor Bjorkman and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions on this one? All in favor? It's carried.
8.2, Legal and Legislative Services 2019-015, re Colchester Memorial Cemetery Shed Roof Replacement. That said report be received and that council approves the additional funding of $1,700 above the allocated 2019 capital budget through the Asset Management Reserve.
Have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? I do have a question myself. I thought at this building here we're going to move the building. Am I correct on saying that?
Yeah, we looked at moving the building. However, there's currently, right now, there's water, hydro, and a gas line that all go into that facility. So to move that would be very, very costly, to have to move all those services. So we're proposing that it just stays where it's at for right now. Oh, well, indefinitely.
The only reason I'm saying that, because I don't want to spend the money on the roof, then we're going to move it and damage the building.
Agreed, yeah. And even to move that building itself, we had it assessed, JFLEC went out there, and we had it assessed, and it actually can't be moved. It would have to be torn down, and all the services moved to the new location and rebuilt.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
8.3, Legal and Legislative, 2019-16, read dog tag fees during dog license campaign for receipt, and that council allows an exemption from the license fees stated in Schedule A of the Town of Essex Animal Care and Control Bylaw, and approves a one-time temporary reduction in dog licensing fees to $15 for new licensees only for the purposes of and for the duration of the 2019 licensing campaign, which is expected to be held between July 3rd to approximately August 31st.
Mover, please. Councillor Verbeek. Seconder, Councillor Bondi. Any questions on this one? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wondering if, when we send the commissioners out, if they can pass out information as well about the noise bylaw in terms of dogs barking. I'm getting complaints about dogs barking, and who do we call when dogs bark? Is it the animal control officer? Is it the OPP? Because it can be very disruptive to neighborhoods, to communities. So that would be, can we use this as part of an educational program as well? I really love going door to door. You know, I talked to the Humane Society today and was trying to pull some stats about trying to estimate how many dogs we had. The Dog Pound Committee hasn't met this term yet, and that's okay. But in the past, we had a formula of how many dogs. It was like 42% of households have 1.33 dogs. So I think in Essex, if everybody bought a dog tag, that would be like $70,000. And I know there's a petition going around saying that we don't need dog tags. And hey, I'm all for investigating and going down that road. But I think in the meantime, dog tags to me are a user fee. You know, when we go to the ice, we pay partial fees to go on the ice. You know, the dog tags are partial fees to cover the dog parks. You know, and offsets the dog catcher, which is now the animal control officer, and which is the Lakeshore Dog Pound. The Lakeshore Dog Pound and the animal control officer, I would say around $50,000, $60,000. So it's kind of recuperating that cost. In the perfect world, we would not need dog tags. We would not need an animal control officer, and we would not need a dog pound. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of irresponsible pet owners out there. And some years, we have more dogs loose in our municipality than in the town of Lakeshore, which just blows my mind because Lakeshore is double our size and more rural. So I support this. I've always supported doing this, and I know we're going to get some squawking, but I think it's what we do. It's what we have to do. If we have a bylaw, we have to enforce it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vandendal.
Yeah, I don't really support the dog tax, because that's all it is, a dog tax, especially when we don't tax cats. I know people think the solution is that we should also tax cats, but I think that's ridiculous too. But in this case, we're going to be spending $10,000 to promote licenses to make up a gap of only $14,000. And this one-time only fee, people see through this. They'll pay their one fee, and then they won't pay it again this next year. So I think this is kind of fruitless and pointless, but I'm not going to argue any further. Thanks.
Okay.
Just to your comment regarding them paying the one time and not paying after that. So what happens is the information is collected and it's added to our dog tag invoicing program, and they will be invoiced every year thereafter. So it's a information and data collection exercise. Thank you.
Does that clarify it for you, Councillor?
Well, each year it does drop, because I think on average 9 years is a turnover of 10% of the pets, and so that's how they escape it. So maybe you can renew it automatically that way, but the new ones aren't. So that's how they're getting around this. I mean, it's dropped from 1,900 to 1,400. So we know they're getting away somehow.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on this one? All in favor? It's carried.
8.4 on the agenda is Planning 2019-37, Countywide Active Transportation System 2019 Event Report for receipt this evening by council.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Guerin. Any questions? Councillor Bjorkman.
Yeah, just to Mr. Watson, if you could just give us a highlight on, for the public's edification of what the event was.
Okay, Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every year CWATS gives basically a public open house and educational event for local people to basically know what CWATS is all about and the active transportation system that's being developed over the next 20 years. For the last 4 years, it was basically done to basically a small group of people representing CWATS would go to each individual municipality and sort of talk to schools and other people about what was going on. This year was decided to have one large event, which was a much larger scale and in one location, and that was in the county building parking area. And it was... And subsequent to the announcement of that, about 400 people attended. There were 40 volunteers who were involved. And what it was displays that were held by each municipality. Each one had a tent and a display of what CWAT's active transportation facilities and programs they were offering. So the town of Essex had one as well. And also there were other events there which were basically intended to draw attention, not just to children, but also to adults as to what was being offered. And one of the things that we found with our display was that there was a lot of people were quite surprised at what has been accomplished by council, in the town of Essex, especially along County Road 50. And so a lot of maps that were produced by TWEPI showing that the CWATS routes were taken away, and people fully expect to use it. So I think having one event like that was a much bigger draw. And the decision next year will really be, will it be held here again, because it was very successful, or will it be held at different venues throughout the region? So say one in LaSalle, one in Amherstburg the year after, and so on. So that's the question that will be addressed for the next time around. But this was the first event of its kind. It was very successful. So and I give kudos to all the people who participated in that.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To add to this report, two things. I did take notes at the ward open house, so we did get one of the concerns that some of the paved shoulder was falling apart. I've yet to see it, but I'll send in some of those notes too. The other thing, the yearly question that I get, just to raise it for public awareness too, so hopefully I don't get bombarded by like 10 people on Facebook. We're going east, and I know the reason why we're going west, but can we just recap the reason why we're going west? We're not going west at this point again. Residents out there are really anxious to have it throughout the entire municipality, and it's really costly, so just to have...
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? All in favor? Oh, pardon me?
Just to have Mr. Watson update us.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the big push was to go eastward. Basically, the County Road 50 was considered to be one of the premier active transportation corridors in the whole county. And the idea being to have a circular ring road system all the way around from Lake St. Clair all the way down to Lake Erie. And County Road 50 was our top priority because it's a very significant road for the town of Essex. The reason why we went east was simply because the greatest incentives are coming from Kingsville and Leamington. They're basically developing their system. Kingsville will be reaching us by 2020, and as you know, council approved completing the balance of County Road 50 eastward to Kingsville this year. So by 2020, we'll have a complete system from Colchester all the way to Point Pelee. And that's the reason why the emphasis was to the east. Once that's done, then of course the push will be to go westward. and at least take in Colchester and as much as we can to the west, as basically in the same manner we did going east.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Mr. Watson about the possibility of, you told us previously that there are places to the west of the end of the bike lanes that are too difficult to do because of culverts and swales and abrupt drop-offs and that sort of thing. And I just wondered if we could do parts of it, because people are riding their bikes there anyway, and if we could make it safe for parts of it and just leave, until we figure out what we're doing about the rest of it. I just wondered if that had been addressed. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, you are correct. It is very complicated. We're going west from where it ends right now in Colchester because of the swales, because of the concerns for possible species at risk, which, is a very difficult situation if we encounter it. And so the idea, though, is to get at least to Maiden Lane, at least get to the end of the built-up area of Colchester, hopefully next year. But it depends again on council's willingness to fund this, because remember, the next leg of the eastern section, which takes us to Kingsville, was essentially 3 years worth of work in one. And I guess it's a question then, if that has been successful and is well received by the public, really it's a matter of how much does council want to spend in the forthcoming years.
Any other questions? If I may, Jeff, eventually it will be connected, westward all the way through. It has to be one day coming. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it will be done eventually. So, go ahead, Jeff, again.
The biggest challenge is that next kilometer going west. After you go through that, it becomes very easy to do the rest of that section because it's quite flat and the boulevards are quite wide. So the challenges that you see right now are much less going westward.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor? It's carried.
Under item 8.5 of the agenda this evening, there are two items for council's consideration. The first being Planning Report 2019-38, and then the second item is a specific request from 248-4775 Ontario Inc. with respect to a demolition at 230 Centre Street. With respect to Planning Report 2019-38, the suggested resolution is to receive and looking for council to agree to amending the demolition grant component of the rehabilitation grant program of the community improvement programs for Essex Centre, Harrow, and Colchester to provide a grant structure to allow a grant amount equal to 50% of the cost of demolition for the first $12,000 in total demo costs, plus 15% of the cost of demolition thereafter, to a maximum grant of $25,000. And the last recommendation in this report, that council approve an increase of $16,000 to the 2019 Harrow CIP budget to be funded from reserve.
Could I have a mover on this one, please? Councillor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Malash, any questions, discussion on this one? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the recommendations. Also wondering, when time permits, if administration can bring forward updated information on the CIP, how much funds are in there and who's used it lately. Kind of like how we get building reports, just to kind of see what businesses are getting the CIP would be nice. Council used to approve them and we don't, and I don't want to anymore, but it's kind of good to see like how much money we have left, so that if we get into a situation like this, we know what we're looking at.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vanendal.
Yeah, I'm opposed to this. Talk about setting a bad precedent, opening the floodgates, blah, blah, blah. This guy is shaking us down for an unforeseen increase on his part and his business expenses. He's been costing this thing out for several years. He finds out it's going to cost more, he says, and he wants us to pay the difference. I think this is a really bad thing to do. First of all, the school board should have been ameliorating this to begin with. I know that it's our building now, but it's like this group of taxpayers is being punished for something another arm of government did, and now we're having to pay a contract cost increase that somebody didn't see and should have, and it's his risk, shouldn't be ours. And I don't think we should do this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other Councillor Bjorkman?
Just as a point of clarification, this is not our building, right? This is owned by, it's already owned by, it's owned by a private business, and now these guys are coming in to do their development. Now to that, I'm interested with the letter that we got from Ontario Inc. 2484775 says that they've received a quote for $82,500 to complete the demolition. In our notes, we received a notice that it could be between $83,000 and $183,000. I'm just wondering where that $183,000 number came from.
Can anybody answer this? Jeff, can you answer this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in any CIP grant program, we always require at least two bids on a project, and they actually got 3, and the range was from $83,000 to $183,000, so it's quite extreme. The one who's actually the lowest bidder basically wanted to recycle the materials that they take down, so it's not just a question of taking it down and carting it away, which is probably what the other 2 were intending to do. So that's why there's such a big spread.
Well, just reading it, when you read it the way it's there, the estimates range from $83,000 to $183,000 because of the addition to the parking lot removal. So it looked to me, I wasn't sure if they weren't sure if it was going to cost them $83,000 or $183,000, and that was one of the reasons they were coming to us. So that answers that question. I am in favor of a graduated scale for all this. We're saying that in our plan, we're going to do 50% of up to $12,000, and we'll do $25,000 up to $250,000. So I agree that that's a hard line to just get past. You don't get $12,000 until you get to $250,000, and now you jump up to $25,000. A graduated line in that percentage, that if you're doing a job that it's going to cost $125,000, yeah, you should get more than the $12,000. You should get the percentage that fits on that sliding scale. I'm almost there. That would be $16,425. So I just want to put that out to council. Is that something that we want to look? Was that correct? Is that a correct number? Okay. Thank you. So that's all. I'm looking at that as an option to what we're doing here.
Jeff, if you can...
Thank you. Just to clarify, the grant is 50% of the cost of demolition to a maximum grant of $6,000. So in other words, if you spend $12,000, we'll give you $6,000. If you spend $250,000, we'll give you $6,000. So there's a huge gap in between. That's what the issue really was. And the $250,000 was an issue raised by Councillor Bondi when she talked about, for example, the possible demolition of Harrow High School. It would be a very expensive proposition. And it was agreed by council at that time that $6,000 really wasn't much of an incentive. And so it was raised to $25,000 for $250,000 spent. But anything between $12,000 and $250,000, you get $6,000. That's it. So basically, this recommendation is to establish, as you say, a scale based on the total cost of demolition to fill in that gap, but still not to be too generous. And that's really the question for council: is how generous do you wish to be, and still provide an incentive.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other questions? This is a tough one, so I'm going to... Oh, no, go ahead.
Just the other part of this, and I'm happy to use this as a tool for us, but we need to be careful. We need to do it across the board. And if we're going to use the sliding scale, let's use the sliding scale. We're already, I believe this development has no development fees. We're still at our 0%. It's the town is doing a lot here, and I think we need to make sure that we're staying consistent, or as Councillor Vanderdolen said, what we talked about with the signs earlier, if that starts, why can't the next person? Why can't the next person? We have a program, we have a setup, and we think we should go by that program.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Bjorkman, or Councillor Vandenhoe?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, so if we agree to this, does that mean that we're automatically on the hook for the demolition of high school for whatever we agree to tonight? That would be kind of boxing us in. It's also automatically going to drive up the cost of demolition of that school, and that would be bad.
Through Mr. Mayor, well, they do have bona fide bids on the project, so that $83,000 is a fixed number. The real, and as you say, we don't want to recommend a site-specific amendment to the CIP program. Our position always has been, if it's good for one, it's good for everybody. And so the question then is what are the odds of a large-scale demolition coming again? And other than Harrow High School, there really isn't much out there that we're likely to be involved with. So the question then is, you know, every dollar that we spend is CIP money that can't be spent on something else. And that's always been our concern. And that's why we want to take a somewhat conservative approach as far as what we dole out for any specific grant and what will the implications of that be.
Thank you, Jeff. Councillor Bondi, you already spoke once. Go ahead. One more time, and that's it. And then
Yep. What's good for one is good for another.
whatever.
Pardon me?
Let's
Okay. Did you say whatever,
No,
Mr. Mayor?
let's go.
Okay. So we would be lucky to have the high school demoed. If it cost us up to $25,000, if we do not buy the high school and we have somebody come around, I've been the ward counselor in that ward now for 8-9 years, and our staff, our Kevin Carter bylaw has been dealing with nothing but complaints and headaches about this junior school. The residents in Harrow would be happy to throw an extra $10,000 of it and happy to see it go. We would be so lucky to have a developer come in and buy Harrow High School and turn it into something. I would love to do the same thing for Harrow High School. And I hope this council does the same thing for the junior school. We would be lucky. We're going to benefit.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so we have all in favor of this motion? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the first part of this, there's two elements to item 8.5. The first part is to amend the demolition grant component of the program itself on a going forward basis. That the second item would be the specific request from the developer currently. So as far as reading the motion that's on the floor, as moved by Councillor Bowman and seconded by Deputy Mayor Meloche, that planning report 2019-38 be received, and that council amends the demolition grant component of the rehabilitation grant program of the CIP programs for Essex Centre, Harrow, and Colchester to provide a grant structure to allow a grant amount equal to 50% of the cost of demolition for the first $12,000 in total demo costs, plus 15% of the cost of demolition thereafter, to a maximum grant of $25,000. And lastly, that council approve an increase of $16,000 to the 2019 Harrow CIP budget to be funded from reserve.
Thank you, Rob. All in favor? Opposed? Want that recorded?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, 8.5.1 is the specific request from the developer a request to receive the maximum contribution to the demolition at 230 Center Street, that said correspondence be received, and that council approves the maximum contribution grant of $25,000 for this demolition at 230 Center Street.
Mover, please, Councillor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Meloche. Any questions? All in favor? Oh, go ahead.
Okay. What is the motion?
So this motion, because the previous resolution just passed by council, amends the demolition grant component program on a going forward basis, but this request predates that. So we added a separate resolution to deal with that specific request this evening, if it's council's desire. So the specific motion on this one is that the correspondence from 2484775 Ontario, Inc., dated April 25th, 2019, asking that council consider granting them the maximum contribution of $25,000 to demolish the existing school building at 230 Center Street be received, and that council approves the maximum contribution grant of $25,000.
Okay, so I'm not in favor. I'm in favor of using the sliding scale between the 12,000 and the 250,000, which I believe is the $16,425 benefit we would give towards the demolition. That's the correct number? So I'm not in favor of giving them the full 25,000. I'm in favor of following our CIP plan the way it is now and giving them the benefit that's there. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have to go back to the original mover on that, or no?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
To the-
all in favor? Opposed? All in favor? We already had a motion.
Questions, this is the second.
Questions to the second? None? All in favor of the second one?
Clarification? So right now, we're voting to give the full $12,000, or the full $25,000 to the demolition. That's the motion on the table right now. If you're in favor of doing that,
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Are we all in favor of the 25? Who's in favor? Jeff Watson wants.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's some confusion here. It really isn't necessary to make this motion at all. If you make an amendment to the grant system, which is what you did in the first resolution, you really don't have to do that extra step because it will automatically follow that they will get the benefit of that sliding scale. So you don't have to. You actually don't need this motion.
Yeah. Thank you. So all we need to do is have a motion to receive. We'll have to remove that motion.
Yeah, Councillor Bowman and...
Councillor Bowman, you'll withdraw? Okay, and the seconder, okay, Deputy Mayor Malash. So we just need a motion received. All in favor? It's carried.
.6, Finance and Business Services Report 2019-02, read credit card transaction processing changes. That said report be received, and that council approves the change to the credit card payment cap for property tax payments to a maximum of $1,000 per transaction, per roll number, and per installment.
Is there a mover on this one? Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on this one? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our staff, Jeffrey Morrison, thank you for throwing in the old report in there, and it was really good to see. I'm just trying to find it now, from Kate from before, from Kate. That's not even her last name anymore. And so is it true that we are still covering a substantial amount of credit card costs? Like if you look from 2016 to 2017, we are carrying $67,000. So people that pay their taxes by cash are actually subsidizing people that pay their taxes by credit card. I do believe, I like this report, I support this report, I think it tightens it up. I'm just wondering if it goes far enough, because from my conversations with other residents in the community, we are one of the only municipalities that accept credit cards for paying taxes. People that pay cash don't really want to see $67,000 on credit card fees. So that's my question.
I do have a question too, and then, okay, go ahead.
Through the chair, you're correct. In 2016 to 17, it was approximately $67,000 in credit card fees that were subsidized through taxation. So we moved forward with this report with a cap of $1,000. However, we were questioned on the intent of the resolution during tax time by a few residents, and upon reviewing it, we felt that we couldn't hold it to installment date. So in sending out SUPs, we actually did have one resident come in 15 times and pay $15,000, 15 days in a row to get around that, so they could collect points. So what we're doing here is that we're moving forward to tighten up the language within it. To be honest, the overall intent is to eventually, potentially by the end of 2019, phase out collecting credit cards at the counter for tax payments and move virtually to Virtual City Hall. Virtual City Hall has the opportunity that we can add a fee in there. The fee would be 1.75% per transaction. That way it would pass on to the user of the credit card if they choose to pay that way. There's only one other municipality in the County of Essex that accepts credit cards, and they do through a third-party vendor, which charges 2.5% surcharge.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. So 4 installments means $4,000. So that's a lot of money in terms of us paying the fees. I'm wondering if this council, maybe not in 2019, but maybe looking into 2020, so we have enough time for public education, has any appetite to knock it down to the installments of $500 rather than $1,000. I'm just throwing it out there. It doesn't even have to be decided tonight, but being a councillor that pays, some people pay their taxes, well, we could get there, right? Some people pay their taxes on their mortgage, so they're actually paying all along. Some people pay cash, so what's fair, right? I want to be fair. Personally, I own 3 properties in the town of Essex, and I don't want to subsidize credit card users. It may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm throwing it out.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Bondi, I agree with you 100%. I looked at this the other day, and I agree. We should not be subsidizing taxpayers through credit card use. It costs the municipality money. At this point was what, $67,000? $67,000. $67,000 just in tax money alone could do a sidewalk, for example. And that's not counting drainage. We have people coming in paying drainage bills, and we talked about it the other day, and there was a huge one. He come every day and put $1,000 on his credit card. That is not fair to the public that pays their taxes by cash. It's not fair. Why should we subsidize ratepayers to get points on their credit cards? It's not right. And to me, I see this minimum $1,000. I would like to see us do away with it completely do away with it. I don't think we should be subsidizing the taxpayers. So I don't know how council feels on that. I agree with you, Councillor, but $500, I would like to see us do away with credit card payment completely, because I think it's fair to the regular taxpayer, and it's not fair to the regular taxpayer on credit card use, plain and simple. Jeff.
Through the chair, just to give it some perspective, that $67,000 equates to approximate 0.46% tax increase. So, also through the chair, that was, as I mentioned, with Virtual City Hall, where you can go online, you can see your balance owing at any point, you can see that amount, you can make a payment, and in real time see that payment impact the amount that you owe. That's the goal with the implementation of that is that we could eventually, with a communication plan and marketing plan, we can eventually move towards that, and then have the customer service kiosks located in various facilities with the iPads where residents can come and pay their taxes. So.
Thanks. And just further to council, I'd like the council to get behind me and let's not support the credit card use. Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, just to continue on the same thought that Jeffrey was putting forward. I think the idea is that when this kicks in, the actual customer will be paying the cost of the online payment. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct, that the surcharge will be passed on to the resident using the credit card.
Councillor Van Anote.
Yes, Mr. Chair, when I was a civilian, I was an enthusiastic user of credit cards to pay my taxes. I thought, why not? You know, I paid quite a bit of Canadian Tire money doing it. I think I bought a wheelbarrow with it. But anyway, I thought the town was dumb to do it, and I'm glad that we've moved to to get rid of this, because there's no justification for throwing away $67,000 just so some people can reap some points. This is a good idea.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek.
Through you, Your Worship, I agree 100% with, I'd like to move towards the virtual town hall quickly so that we can eliminate using the credit cards. It was an eye-opener to me, so I think we really do need to focus on the education piece. Because a lot of people, if they learn that it's costing us, the fees that it is costing us, they will be on side with us eliminating the credit card payments, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just to Jeff, was it just the tax amount was $67,000? Was that including the drainage bills too? Or just the tax part of it?
Through the chair, that's the surcharge on the total transaction volume.
Thank you. So what's our pleasure here on this one here? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe we approve the recommendations in this report, but I think that it seems like this council wants to do more, and I agree with where you're sitting, so maybe we also ask administration to come back with an implementation education strategy on how we can move to not accepting credit cards, or we move to accepting credit cards the way the other municipality does with a surcharge.
Thank you. That's your motion.
Do we have a motion?
Okay.
Or technical point, are we allowed to prevent people from paying by credit card? What if we let them pay by credit card, but they have to pay the extra fee? If the extra 1.7 or 6 or whatever it happens to be?
Jeff, can you answer that, please?
Through the chair, we're not retail, so we don't have the opportunity to add the surcharge at the terminal. We would have to calculate it manually and then add it, which wouldn't be feasible during a tax installment date. So, but online through Virtual City Hall, we can add that surcharge right in. Did that? But no, we don't have to accept credit cards.
Does that answer that, Councillor?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we had a motion and by
Councillor Bjorkman.
and Councillor Verbeek.
And Councillor Verbeek,
Second. So, all in favor of that motion? It's carried. And Councillor Bondi, did you want to make? We don't need it, just direction, eh? Okay. Can you repeat your direction again, please?
I think majority of us might be on the same page, but we'll see when administration comes back. They just bring this back again when they have time, and we look at an implementation, public education around getting down to that zero.
Right. Thank you.
.7 is Community Services 2019-027, re Town of Essex Anti-Bullying Campaign. That said report be received and that council approves administration moving forward in developing an anti-bullying campaign for all town facilities, which would include social media, enhanced staff training, and consistent facility signage promoting bully-free zones, which would include contact information for the OPP, and finally, that council approves funding up to $750 from the council contingency fund to cover the cost of signage and any additional marketing.
Have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor Malash, and a seconder, Councillor Bowman. Any questions on this one? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick comment on the report. I know Mr. Doug Sweet's not here tonight, our Director of Community Services, but he's done an awesome job on this report. It covers everything that we had talked about in the last meeting and everything that we could possibly want in our plan. So it's covering, it talks about the media campaign, talks about putting signage in the parks, bully-free zones, posters as well for bulletin boards and so on. It talks about making sure the local police are more involved in knowing what's going on and providing a non-emergency number for residents to call the police at any point in time so that they are informed of any bullying that goes on. And the part that I really like here is enhanced staff training on how to address bullying. You know, if there's bullying out there and we have staff that recognizes that there's bullying going on, we've got staff that can intervene, and all staff have this type of training in their High Five program already, but this would be a module that would be included for Parks staff training in the spring, to provide techniques for staff on how to deal with bullying. So I really love this report. Thank you so much, administration. And like I said, Doug Sweet's not here tonight, but I really wanted to thank him publicly for putting together such a great report. And I'm sure that tonight we'll be passing this. So thanks again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, on social media, there's been some mixed reviews on what we're going to be doing, but I really think we've identified a problem. I think the report is I don't think Doug's missed anything in the report. It's a step in the right direction at very little cost. So I really like what I see, and I think it's a great report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Especially at the Ward 3 and Ward 4 open house, there was a lot of talk about not calling the OPP non-emergency number enough. So I think we really need to get that message out there to our residents to call the non-emergency number and to really make sure that that number is readily available. I often get people messaging me and going, what's the non-emergency number? And then I Google it and give it to them. So let's get it out there. Let's start tracking it. And I also urge members of our public to also let council know, because they could be calling the non-emergency number, but also let your ward reps, let your council, your mayor, your deputy mayor know if what we're doing is working. Because we may have to, we may have to tweak it. Like, we may have to see if we need to step it up, right? There's been some incidences. Since last Tuesday, I've had 4 messages about OPP concerns. So I want to make sure what we're doing is working and that we don't fall off target again. I would also like to, and I know that this has been talked about with other council members too, invite the OPP to have a little meet and greet with council. I don't know who the new staff sergeant is. I know we bought them bikes before. I would love to see them out on their bikes more often. I'd love to see increased presence down in Colchester. I recently just had some complaints about children at the park and parking concerns again this weekend. So I want to work hard in this term of council to build that relationship with the OPP again, because I really feel our residents do not feel a really good police presence in our community, and that's kind of concerning.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from council? All in favor? Oh. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to give a team's perspective to the Town of Essex anti-bullying campaign. I have read over the recommendations and conclusions that were given to the council. I think it is a wonderful start to the program, but I feel like we're missing more of a youth component. By engaging our youth and the community in an anti-bullying initiative, we provide them opportunities to play more of a meaningful role. And that, in turn, ensures safer environments for them and their peers. An example could possibly be an anti-bullying initiative where youth council members and youth put together presentations and presents them to youth/students throughout the town. During my research, I came across the Healthy Youth Relationship Program, which is under the umbrella of the Red Cross. They will train youth and youth facilitators to co-facilitate program lessons, activities to younger youth. Alongside a prevention educator, the organization signs a service agreement, and Red Cross trainers conduct a 14-hour session with the youth to clarify them as youth facilitators. In conclusion, as a youth in this community, I am pleased that the council and administration are taking steps to address the bullying concerns brought forth by the community.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Huffman, did you have anything to say?
I would like to say that I think this is a really great initiative for us. I know that bullying is a problem, and it's not just a problem for little kids, it's a problem for teenagers as well. And I was talking to my mom about this, and she said that when she was younger, we had this program, this is just a suggestion, they had a program called Block Parent, where a house had a sign in the window, and that's a safe space for children to go, so the people who live there could get a police clearance, and if somebody is getting threatened or they don't feel welcome or they need help, they need an adult, they could go there, and it could be in the proximity of the parks and the areas that are affected by the bullying. And I think that could be another step if there is an OPP presence, that this is another solution for this.
Thank you, Counselor. The block program, that's still in some areas, isn't it? Does anybody know? Any of the counselors know? I know, I remember the signs in the windows back in the days, but no, eh? And you're correct, that should be brought back. That should be. That's a good point. Thank you. So, to the recommendation, all in favor of this? It's carried. Now we go to reports from these. Reports. Reports from you. Want me to say?
Sorry, 1 second here. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the last item as added to the adopted published agenda this evening is 8.8. That would be Community Services Report 2019-028. Results of request for tender, Essex Center Sports Complex with respect to the west parking lot reconstruction Phase 3. That said report be received and that council award the request for tender for the above project to Jeff Shepley Excavating Limited in the amount of $341,265.39, including non-refundable sales tax.
Thank you. Have a motion on this one here, please? On this report? Councillor Verbeek, as seconder. Councillor Van Nul. Any questions on this one here? Okay, all in favor of the report? It's carried. Thank you.
Item 9 on the agenda, any additional reports from our youth members this evening?
Councillor Hilton? No. Councillor Silsey? Nothing? Okay, thank you.
Item 10, any update from County Council this evening?
No updates.
That the correspondence listed in agenda item 11.1 be received and where indicated to further share such information. These items would be presumably on consent with the individual councilors to note any specific items they wish to speak to.
Are you doing them all?
Yeah, if it's council's wish.
There was one in there, Would council like to do these individually, or all, okay, all in favor? Seconder, please. Councillor Bowman. Questions, please, on any of them? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 11.1.3, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, it kind of ties into the next one, but I noticed in some towns like Amherstburg and on Howard going into Windsor, there's actual spotted impaired driver, pull over, call 911. I don't know if that's a possibility of getting any in our municipality. I don't know how effective they would be, but last Tuesday, after leaving the ward meeting in Colchester, there was 3 cars, a black Camaro and a green Chevy doing burnouts, and one of the other cars had open bottles of booze on the top. And the police were called not only by myself, because I walked out and there was 10 residents there, and they said, Sherry, call the police, so I did. And I wasn't the first one to call the police. A resident that was at the ward meeting called the police, and the response time was 40 minutes. And by how they were driving around the village, before I saw, not by me, there was a suspicious accusations of possibly drinking and driving. So, and it took 40 minutes. So, I don't know. And this is one of the things I would like to meet with the OPP about. Like, what are we supposed to do? Is it worth calling 911 or the OPP non-emergency number if people are thought to be drinking and driving? You know, and then Friday night, I'm at home and my inbox and my social media is flaring up because a black Camaro T-bones a car at the corner of Erie and King Street, which I would love to know when that report's coming back, because I'm getting beat up about that again, whether that was drinking and driving, because people in Harrow know that there's a stop sign there. You shouldn't really T-bone somebody there. So was that drinking and driving, right? Like, can we crack down on this? Like, stuff is happening in our community, and I feel like we're kind of sitting back, right? Like, it's great to place an ad in the Mad yearbook, but is there something else we can do? Can we crack down? What else can we do? So that's my comments on that. The City of St. Catharines, the resolution, free menstrual products at city facilities. Yeah, I want to receive in, I also want to support that. So I don't know, maybe there's not appetite here, but maybe there's another councillor that wants to support that. I would love to receive and support that. Correspondence from the City of Catharines for the people out there, right? Advising council they wish to investigate the options and costs for a pilot project that would offset menstrual products. I mean, that's what they're doing. I think it's great. I don't necessarily think we have to do it here in Essex, but hey, I support them. And it's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other council members? No? Councillor Verbeek.
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, I see that 11, 1.3 and 1.4 do tie in together. So this grant that I'm really grateful that it was applied for and that it was received. It's a lot like the 1,000-man grant we got a few years ago where the OPP was able to use the money, but it's directed strictly towards the RIDE program and in trying to, make our roadways safer and cut back on the drinking and driving. My first thought when I saw that, I guess, I get that we can't really speak to the OPP operations, but I do think that, it is our place to make suggestions, and maybe since they're getting this huge grant to put towards RIDE programs, maybe some of the money that they do use for RIDE programs could go into unmarked cars at places like the beaches and the parks where this is going on, because we all saw it after the meeting when they pulled up and they put their Bud Lights on top of their roofs. Also, just to respond to Councillor Bondi's remarks, I too, since those open houses, since our ward meetings, have had a lot of contact about, having a discussion with our OPP. And so, these are open meetings. You are welcome to attend the Police Service Board meetings.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? Councillor Bjorkman.
Yeah, I will just agree with Councillor Bondi as far as the City St. Catharines resolution, that we should have a pilot program and look into making sure that there are menstrual products in our recreational facilities and that it's available to our residents. There are too many people that do without in our communities that we may necessarily not know about, but through my daughters and friends, it's a very important thing to have for freedom of movement, for freedom of activity, for freedom of being able to be active in our community. So I think it's a well worth project.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor? Did you? I'll let you speak a second.
Well, it's on the next one. The free menstrual products. I too want to support that. Do more than just receive it. I'd like to also support that.
Okay. Would council wish to pull that one out and vote on that separately on that one there? Deputy Mayor Malash.
I'll make a motion that we request our administration to come back with a suggestion on how we roll this out and costs associated with it, etc.
That's a good idea. Seconder?
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, we have a current motion to receive all these items, and then this could be a second motion.
Okay, yeah, well, to the first one. All in favor to the first motion? And all in favor now to the second recommendation by Deputy Mayor Malash. We need a vote on that one. We need a seconder, Councillor Guerin. All in favor of that one?
Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. To the Deputy Mayor, could you just restate that roughly for me?
Yes, that we request the administration to come back with a report on offering menstrual and type products in our any community structure that we have and costs associated with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we voted on that.
Okay, sorry about that. (11.2) Correspondence to be considered for receipt or receipt in support. The first item is from the town of Georgina, that the correspondence from the town of Georgina asking that council support their resolution that is calling upon the province of Ontario to review and implement a deposit return program for all single-use plastic, aluminum, and metal drink containers be received or received in port and supported, and if so supported, that the appropriate letters of support be sent.
Have a motion to support it? Okay, seconder? Seconder, Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on this one? Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, well, on the surface, it looks like a great idea, but there's always cost associated with this, and we're adding another stream of collecting, and it's not eliminating the product, it's just creating a source of collection. And I would rather see that the product be eliminated rather than the collection be required. So maybe my feeling is probably the wrong move to go. It should be the other way, but short term it may be the only way.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Andel.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I was writing about the subject 30 years ago as an environment reporter, and I don't think anything has changed. Ontario is the only, I think it's the only major jurisdiction in North America that doesn't collect deposits on pop bottles. And one of the reasons is that the big pop companies have poured millions and millions of dollars into supposedly subsidizing blue box programs. But if you're a cynic, what you really see they're doing is that they're bribing our provincial government to not bring in deposits. And that's why Ontario is surrounded by 400 million people who pay deposits, but we don't, and our ditches are filled with litter because of it, because this brilliant tactic of the pop companies of supporting blue boxes. I think we would be, if you support diversion of plastics and garbage from landfill, then the deposits are absolutely the best way to go, because you'd be instantly incentivizing an army of people to pick up the stuff and to return it. And although it goes against my grain to have more government involvement in anything, in this case, we'd be cleaning up, we'd be taking millions of tons of garbage out of ditches over the whole province if we started collecting deposits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly support this. I think it's great. I understand what Councillor Bowman is saying, and I think that would be golden. If we could do that all together, I don't think we're going to, though. I don't think we're going to stop this culture from bottling their water right now. It's not going to happen. People are still they're going to buy bottled water. I've seen them buy the cases, 3-4 cases at a time, and I was like, my goodness, you can get that from your tap, but when I read about bottled water, not a lot of the bottles actually get into the blue bins. So if we did have a deposit system, I think we could capture more of those bottles of water. I think that also, this is just a little line item. I would love to have this council to have a big discussion about waste diversion, about proper recycling. When I walk around, the recycling is wrong. This municipality, they have user pay garbage. I've got in Harrow Centre before. Can we have the green bins? Essex Centre has some green bins left here. I don't even know about it, but can we have green bins? Can we have composting? Can we have some of the comments I recently heard? Can we have recycling every week? And possibly garbage every other week. There's problems when our yard waste gets picked up. It gets picked up on a Saturday, and then, so if you do your yard waste and it sits out there on Saturday, you have to do it the Friday or the Thursday before. Well, people work. People like to bag their yard waste on Saturday and Sunday from Monday pickup, and we don't have Monday pickup. So what happens, and I know this all too well because it happens in my household, not by me, is that people's yard waste goes in their garbage because they're not going to have a yard waste bag sit outside or sit in their garage stinking for a long time because it stinks. So we need to really open this file and start digging deeper. This is great to support this, but I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. So we didn't get into it in council visioning session, but I really think we need to dig into this a little bit deeper.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other council member? No? So what's our pleasure? We're going to, all in favor? It's carried.
11.2.2, Township of Armour, resolution opposing Bill 115 for receipt and support, and if so supported, that the appropriate letters of support be sent.
I have a motion of support. Councillor Verbeek, seconder? No seconder. You support it? Okay, questions on this one, please. Councillor Van den Knoll.
I think the public really, really supports the move to sell beer and wine in convenience stores and grocery stores. The baby steps taken by the last government weren't enough. The current government is going to just open this wide open. Finally, we're catching up after 50 years of being behind. I don't know what's going on in the township of Armour, which is around Burkes Falls, where I used to spend a lot of time. But I think they're totally wrong about this. The public wants what the Ford government is doing, and I wouldn't support this motion at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other, Councillor Verbeek?
Yes. Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Some of the reasons that I strongly support this motion would be, for starters, I mean, Matt is recognizing us for our support of their efforts, and this, to me, is in complete, opposition of the efforts they're making to keep our roadways safe. The grant that the province just gave to our OPP to support and to, increase our ride programs is in an effort, again, to keep drinking and driving off our roads. Our mental health is stretching our healthcare dollars and our policing budgets because, and we've heard and we know that alcohol is contributing to a lot of this. We also know that I've been hearing from a lot of people that are strongly opposed to this, and I've been reading stories about people that are battling to maintain their sobriety. They make separate routes to work and to run errands so that they can avoid LCBOs and such. Now they've got to potentially have to walk by a counter of alcohol to get their bread and their milk. I just, for these and so many other reasons, I would support this opposition of Bill 115.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bjorkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in agreement with Councillor van der Dolen. I think this is private enterprise. You open it up to business. Actually, I think there's a chance that it would actually be less drinking and driving, because on Saturday night, Sunday night, when you don't have any beer in your house or you want to drink, you're having people over, now you're going to a tavern or you're going to a bar, as opposed to going to the store, getting a six-pack and bringing it home and consuming it on your own property. So it's all about choice to me. It's about allowing people to choose and keeping the government away from telling us what we can do and where we can do it. So I'm in favor of not supporting this. I'll receive it, but I would not support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually in support of this resolution. I believe it's going to make it very easy for young people that are under age of being able to actually buy it to make that purchase. So there's many convenience stores where you have young people that are working in the convenience stores. They're the only ones in there. You're going to see young people getting beer and wine that shouldn't be getting this, and it just makes it easier for them.
Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did take a screenshot of this booze at the corner store, and I put it on my Facebook, and it looks, Facebook, it's a tool, I'm using it, and it looks like half the people say yes and half the people say no. And I've just begun to dig, because it was a long weekend, and I really didn't get a chance to dig that deep, but I think it is a big deal, and I think it is a big file. So I'd like to know what our experts say. None of us are experts here, right? We keep saying that we're not the experts. Our experts are the OPP. And if we invited them, like we want to invite them, we would have their opinion. So I'm in favor of this motion right now. Doesn't mean I won't change my mind. I want to hear the actual pros and cons right from the horse's mouth. What does this say? What does this imply? I also agree with the Deputy Mayor that we are putting young and vulnerable workers, corner store employees. I think we need to hear from corner store employee parents. My daughter works at Tim Hortons. You should see the stuff that happens at Tim Hortons, right? Like, so we're going to have young and vulnerable workers selling alcohol to people that may have already had drinks. Like, this is really, we can't even police the incidents that we're having right now in the village. So I am, as a mom, As somebody who just now experienced reckless drinking driving for the last week, dealing with incidences and people having to be with the jaws of life pried out of vehicles, I'm a little hesitant. Do I want to go there and buy beer at the corner store? Yeah, maybe I do, but I need to know for sure. Not just saying right now, yeah, hey, yes or no. No, let's get the experts at the table and then have a serious conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the sale of the alcohol, in whatever environment it's going to be, you still have to be of age to sell it. You still have to have your smart serve as well. I don't believe the people working in a variety store that are at age 14 or 15 are going to be able to sell alcohol. That's just a point of clarification.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? If I may, I'll give you my view on it. I do not support Bill 115. I believe in Michigan, they've been doing it for 50, 60 years. So you can, on a weekend, if it's a holiday, you have company come over, you have no beer at home or whiskey or whatever. It's nice you're able to drive to the corner store and pick it up. They sell it in grocery stores today. In big grocery stores, you can walk in there and buy beer. No question about it. And I really don't believe it's going to increase drinking and driving. I think if it's available at the corner stores, I think Councillor Bjorkman hit it nail right on the head. If you have beer at home, okay, you have company over, you're drinking at home. You're not getting in a vehicle when you had 5, 6 beers and you're out of beer and you're going to the beer store or to the hotel. I think I don't agree with Bill 115, and I won't be voting to support this. Yeah, I agree with it, but I will not. I agree that we should be able to buy beer at the corner store, plain and simple. Thank you.
So through the chair, just to clarify, the resolution or the proposed motion right now is to receive and support Armour's resolution that opposes Bill 115.
On it? Okay. Seconder, all in favor? Opposed?
3, 4.
To receive.
Sorry, through receive and support the resolution opposing Bill 115. And can I, and I apologize, can I see the hands on the vote again, please?
Okay. All in favor? Opposed?
So motion.
It's tied.
Yep. So motion fails.
Motion fails. It's a tie, motion fails.
Not receipt either?
Huh?
No receipt either?
No.
11.2. Yep,
Don't we have to receive it?
that's right.
Yes. We need to receive it then. Motion,
I'll move to receive.
okay, seconder. Receive it. Councillor Bjorkman, all in favor? Receiving?
It's just receiving.
Yeah, okay. That's it. Who didn't vote?
I was waiting for opposed.
Okay. All in favor? All in favor?
Receiving.
Receiving. Opposed? Jeez. Come on. Huh?
So we're not receiving?
No?
Okay. 11.2.3 is correspondence from Justin Gagnon expressing interest in becoming a member of the Essex BIA for receipt or receiving support, and if supported, that Mr. Gagnon be advised that he has been so appointed and that Schedule A to Bylaw 1777 be updated accordingly.
The motion is Councillor Bjorkman, seconder to support it. Councillor Bowman, all in favor? It's carried.
Item 12, committee meeting minutes, that the minutes listed in agenda item 12, together with any recommendations noted, be received, approved, and adopted as circulated.
Mover, please. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bowman and Councillor Van den Dongen. Any questions on these? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To 12.2, I just want it to be noted that this council has received the minutes and recognized that we are passing the Committee of Adjustment recommendations with a parking exemption in there. The apartment got approved without the required parking spots, and I wanted just to pair that with the comments that were brought up at the open house in wards 3 and 4, saying that, you know, some businesses, or one in particular, is seeing that we're having a parking issue in downtown, and I will send notes of that to administration, but I just wanted to raise it publicly that we have noted that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van den Dongen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if Councillor Bondi wants to raise that, then I want to raise the fact that at that meeting, it was, at the Committee of Adjustment, it was raised that they can rent spots across the street, so problem solved. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually just a comment. So, having served on several boards and committees over all the years, and, you know, I glance over the minutes and I say, yeah, we covered that, and great. But now that I'm looking in on these you know, these committee minutes, I just wanted to point out the Heritage Committee, their minutes are incredible. I just feels like I've been at the meeting. Sarah does an amazing job, and I just wanted to point that out. It's really nice, because a lot of the minutes, you know, just say this, you know, they're not as you know, they're not as descriptive as Sarah's are at the Heritage Committee, and I really appreciate them.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions on any of these? All in favor of the minutes? Carried.
15.1 on the agenda. The following notice of motion was first presented at the June 17th regular council meeting and is being brought forward for consideration this evening. As moved by Councillor Bondi, that council discuss making improvements to the trap, neuter, and release program with the suggestion of magnets, signage, and public education. Once again, as moved by Councillor Bondi, we need a seconder on that.
Need a seconder, please? Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Oh, no. Did you want to talk on it first, Councillor? No?
No, Mr. Mayor, I believe tonight, I don't know if the motions should read that council ask for a report from administration on how to make improvements.
That's
Okay.
your motion? Okay.
Thank you.
We had a mover on that and a seconder. All in favor? Okay, it's carried. Okay.
Item 16, any reports and announcements this evening from the council members?
Deputy Mayor Malachi. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank all the residents that came to the open house last week. It was nice to share their views and share with them the stuff we have going on as well. And I also want to remind everybody that this weekend is our annual Fun Fest in Essex, starting Thursday the 4th through Sunday the 7th. And looks like the weather's going to be good. Hopefully we get a good turnout. I want to thank all council members that are going to be volunteering their time, administration as well. And we look forward to it.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you need, are you okay with volunteers, or did you need more?
Always need more volunteers.
So I'm just going to say to council, if you didn't volunteer, please, you know, if you have time, put in 2 or 3 hours at the minimum, 2 or 3 hours. So thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Verbeek.
Okay, through you, Your Worship, just to, it's not my announcement, but just to touch on what you just said, for the councillors that haven't signed up, it's an easy gig, because where we're looking to put you is in the information booth. You got a nice umbrella to sit under, direct traffic. So what I wanted to speak on was to thank, the weekend before, I was able to represent the town at an event called the Summer Solstice Feast in the Field. It was hosted by the Highland family and put on by the Highland family and the Rotary Club of Essex, and it was just an amazing, beautiful event. And the recipients of the money raised were our fire and rescue, and our chief was there to you know, to represent and explain where the money was going to be used, and our Essex Community Services also was a recipient. So it was a really enjoyable event, and I look forward to attending next year if they make it an annual.
You can bring the kids. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bjorkman, anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just another comment on an event that happened, the open house we had with Mark Collin for the Communities in Bloom prize was a great night. It was full house in McGregor. A lot of people came out. He was very entertaining, lots of good information. It was just a great night all around and a good celebration of what Communities in Bloom has meant to this town. So it was a great night. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again.
I'm going to ask the student councillors, do you have anything tonight? Nothing at all? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not in our future meetings, actually, but tomorrow council is meeting at from 4 to 5 o'clock to discuss road work again, which was another hot topic coming out of our ward meeting. I have heard that the 8th concession, the part that isn't done yet, has cuts in it from drainage. So councilors, we may want to look at that and seeing if we don't go forward with the cold road, if we want to do something else this year, because I'm hearing it's in bad shape. I'm also just want to ask administration, not now, but I just want to, there was a big accident, and it has been come up in the survey that I stuck out in my ward, that the intersection of King and Erie is, again, a problem area. I don't know the traffic accident history on it. I think that's coming in the report, but just giving a little nudge saying that it continues to be a problem corner and an unsafe corner. And whether the report comes back saying we're not doing anything, it's not really a concern, or the report comes back saying, yeah, we do have a lot of traffic accidents here, and it is a bad corner, and we are going to address it. I would just like to start working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vandendoel?
Nothing this week, thanks.
Councillor Bowman?
Just a couple of things, and again, I'd like to thank all the residents that took part in the open houses. It's a great venue to come and talk and get some one-on-one feedback, so great events. Also, just to remind people, the Music in the Parks goes on every week in our community, so please stop around and see them, and it's always a great evening to just sit back and relax and enjoy some music. And finally, obviously, Funfest weekend. Everybody's will be geared up, and I hear people talking about it, so positive news.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to Councillor Guerin, just quickly. Will we be getting a call like the volunteers? Like my name's in there for volunteers. What days we're going to work and what hours?
Yeah, I'll see where they've slotted you, and if they've slotted you, I know they have your name,
Okay.
and you said you're available all weekend.
Yeah.
I think what they're doing is trying to fill in where people are more like, I need to be at this time, that time. They're going to fill you in where they think they need you.
Okay.
But I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Next day.
And I have nothing tonight, so.
Under bylaws, 17.1, bylaws for third reading, 1831 to confirm the proceedings from the June 17th regular council meeting.
Mover, please, Deputy Mayor Malash and Councillor Bowman. All in favor? It's carried.
17.2, bylaws that require three readings this evening. 1832, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement between the Town of Essex and Her Majesty the Queen, as represented by the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services. And this relates to the RIDE grant funding with respect to the Essex Police Services Board.
Mover, please. Councillor Bowman and Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions on this one? All in favor?
1833, also for three readings, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between the Town of Essex and the City of Windsor, and this is with respect to pathway to potential funding agreement.
Have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor Malash and a seconder, please. I need a seconder. Councillor Bowman. Any questions on this one? All in favor? It's carried.
1835, also for three readings, being a bylaw to appoint a Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the Town of Essex.
Councillor Vanden Dolan and Deputy Mayor Malash, any questions on this one? All in favor? It's carried.
17.3, bylaws for two readings this evening. The first bylaw that council has before it is bylaw 1790, and this is to regulate heavy traffic within the municipal limits of the corporation of the Town of Essex. Through you, Mr. Chair, if I have council's indulgence for 5 or 10 minutes, I did prepare a bit of a summary or walkthrough of that bylaw, so I could do that now if that's council's wish.
Yes, I'd like to hear it myself. The rest of council, are you in agreement? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
So, bylaw 1790 essentially is an enhanced version of two, I would suggest to say old, but still very much in force bylaws currently on the books. The first one being 809, which merely designates Class B roads and prohibits heavy travel on those identified Class B roads. The second one, the second quote-unquote old bylaw is 810, and that one merely identifies designated truck routes and states that heavy traffic will only be allowed on those designated truck routes. However, what these two current bylaws do not have, and the reason why we've drafted a new bylaw for council's consideration, is that both of those old bylaws, 809 and 810, they lack a permitting process, and they lack an allowance for security to be provided to the town in order to allow for better control measures and better recourse as it relates to heavy truck traffic on our roads, and as well the damage that could go along with that as a result. So this is what draft bylaw as proposed, 1790 as proposed now has, and so certainly in essence 1790 now is a stronger version of those old bylaws 809 and 810. So bylaw 1790 simply provides that the highway truck traffic, that the heavy truck traffic will only be allowed on those identified and authorized truck routes only, and that's in Schedule A to this bylaw. Any other traffic on any other roads, including Class B, will not be permitted unless a special permit has been issued and complied with, together with the provision of any additional security, financial security, that may be requested by the town as a condition of being issued this special permit. A couple other, just going through some of these other highlights. Heavy truck traffic's defined as a vehicle having a gross weight up on an axle that's in excess of 5,000 kilograms. And this is consistent with the definition of a heavy truck that's used for reduced load periods under the Ontario Highway Traffic Act. Sections 110 and 122 of the Highway Traffic Act specifically give municipalities the authority to require permits in order to allow use of a highway that might be in excess of weights identified, or to use during certain specified reduced load periods. Now, with respect to reduced load periods, it was felt that for this bylaw, as opposed to identifying, a certain frost period or a reduced load period, and the difficulties that may be inherent with that, given our varying climate in this region, it was felt that the restrictions in this bylaw should apply during the entire calendar year in order to allow simply for greater control of heavy truck traffic at all times during the year, obviously within the municipal limits. So the bylaw in Schedule A identifies those heavy truck routes together with mapping where such traffic will be allowed at any time during the year without the need of a special permit or to provide security. And certainly as you review Schedule A, there's recognition that this is just this is a living and growing schedule, which will need to presumably be amended from time to time to allow for possibly other routes as the town grows. But those are it. Those are the routes. All other heavy truck traffic travel on municipal roads will require that special permit. So that special permit will be issued based on the requirements stated in Part 4 of this bylaw, which includes Schedule B. However, we have also given the Director of Infrastructure special discretion, allowing him or her to make any any such special permit subject to such other terms and conditions as they may feel appropriate. And that's simply to allow for, special case-by-case circumstances. The person, just some other points here, the person seeking the permit must apply 3 to 5 working days prior to commencing the truck movement. In order to have that permit issued, there's basic information that the applicant's going to have to provide. A written description, a drawing of the proposed route, details, a description of the vehicle specifying anticipated loads. There would be a requirement to give notice to certain agencies and departments prior to commencing movement on those roads. A key part of the requirements in this bylaw, and it's the same thing with the next bylaw with respect to fill permits, but a key part of the requirements here would be the requirement to enter into a road damage undertaking agreement. And right now the bylaw states that it'll be in the form and manner to be specified by the director. We do have a draft of this agreement, but generally it would require a written acknowledgement, signed acknowledgement from the applicant that agreeing that it'll be responsible for and shall indemnify the town for any damages that may be caused to the highway by the reason of operating or moving heavy truck traffic over those particular roads. Should there be any damage so caused as determined by the town at its discretion, the applicant would be responsible for remediation, and in conjunction with any security that may have been provided, and I'll talk about the security in a minute, the town would be allowed to draw upon that security for the purposes of going in and making those certain repairs. So what would happen is that prior to the heavy truck traffic activity taking place, there would need to be some sort of a survey of the road conditions together by the applicant and the town in order to develop that baseline condition from which future damages can be assessed. During the period of activity, both the applicant and the town would have an obligation to monitor and report any damage to municipal roads that occurs as a result of that activity, and then upon, once that period of activity for which the permit is issued has expired, the town, of course, would have an obligation to inspect the post-activity condition of the roads. Once again, if it's determined by the town at its sole discretion, acting reasonably, that there's been damage as a result of the activity, then the applicant has already agreed that it'll be responsible to repair any such damage, and they will reinstate at their expense, the road allowances to bring it back to that baseline condition in a good and workmanlike manner. And then once again, if the applicant fails to do that, that's the reason where, and the reason why the security kicks in. The security would be held for a period of up to 6 months or longer after that period of activity. Once again, the town would be required, would be able to call upon that security, and it may be in various forms. It may be cash, it may be a letter of credit, it could be a bond. We've left that to the discretion of the Director of Infrastructure in those cases, as well as the amount. You'll notice with this bylaw that we've given discretion to the Director to determine what that reasonable security is going to be, because once again, that's going to be a case-by-case determination. Some situations will require larger security, others minimum. And then, of course, the time-honored question is, and the key part with any of these bylaws is going to lie in its enforcement provisions. As we're talking about the movement of vehicles, this certainly has to be enforced in cooperation and by the Ontario Provincial Police. In drafting this bylaw, we did provide a draft copy of this to the OPP, specifically asking them to review it from an enforcement perspective. We had some minor comments that really didn't pertain to enforcement, but they indicated that they didn't foresee any concerns with this. And then just a couple of final comments. Standard exemptions under this bylaw would be, your emergency vehicles, public utility, municipal vehicles, contractors providing services to the town. I mentioned Schedule A, that has the mapping with the authorized heavy truck routes. Schedule B contains some of those additional special permit requirements, including a non-refundable application fee and the form of security that can be accepted. And then finally, we've increased the number of and have proposed higher set fines. The set fines under the existing bylaw 809 and 810 would remain in effect until those set fines have been approved. And then certainly, for more serious cases, we would have recourse under Provincial Offences Act, and we would be able to treat it as a Part 3 offense where we could start a proceeding. So this is a start, I think, and a move in the right direction. Certainly, we now have in that bylaw something that was missing with respect to old bylaws 809 and 810. But we brought it to council this evening just for just for 2 readings, for council's comments, and subject to any questions council has. That's my summary on that one.
Thank you, Rob. Is there any questions from council? Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for you to our clerk and maybe our CEO, if there's a road on there that residents, like, I'm just looking at Sinisac, I'm just looking at Harrow Center, Sinisac Street from Queen to Erie. Celix is no longer there. Is there anything that anybody can do to get a truck route not designated a truck route anymore? Like, I've got a lot of complaints on that road. I know I brought them forward before, and I wasn't even sure if that road was designated a truck route, but that's one of my questions. Another thing is, in our rural areas, do we have truck routes as well? Like, are there preferred roads that trucks should be on? So, like, what about Ward 2? What about Ward 3? Like, I'm really interested in those roads, too, because we're going ahead, like, with different road products based on different road uses. So 2 questions there.
Thank you, Councilor. Who can answer the question for? Can you answer it, please?
Through your worship, as in any bylaw, for your first question, council as a body can determine what roads they want and what roads they don't want. So if there are roads that council feels are no longer, deemed necessary in terms of truck route, we can have that discussion. We can provide comment on that from administration's point of view in terms of why we feel it would be a truck route or still be a truck route, and then council can make that decision if they want to edit that out. So in terms of truck routes. In terms of rural truck routes, county roads are always the preferred push. We push all our traffic to county roads. Those county roads are meant to move traffic. They're meant to move trucks. They're meant for that. So I guess in simple forms, that for county roads, those are the routes we designate trucks to route. Any other roads, in terms of our rural roads, they would need to apply for this permit. So when they're looking to bring in fill, when they're looking to, either augment their properties, do construction, et cetera, they would come to us and the process would begin. Look at the road, deem what an appropriate, how much they're filling, what that fee is going to be, look at the road after, see if there's damage caused, protect our roads that way.
So the 3rd concession, the 4th concession, we should not see semi-trucks on there unless, is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Van Andel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't quite understand this. It's a heavy truck is anything with an axle over 5 tons. So that means you have to apply for permission to bring in, say, a load of gravel or a cement truck to do a cement driveway or anywhere in the town centers or on any concession road for that matter?
I can answer that, Councillor. That's not what we're aiming at here. If I may speak on it just for a couple minutes. I'm basically the one that brought this forward a year ago. What is happening is very upsetting. I have a neighbor just down the road from me. I won't mention any names, but he was paid to bring fill in there. He was being paid by the load. And I think he's got 12 acres there, and he built his land up. He completely ruined the 4th concession. And when I spoke to this resident, and the resident says to me, I pay taxes. And I said, I understand you pay taxes, but look what you done to our road. He didn't care. He didn't care. I can see bringing in, by permit, loads if you're building a new home. You need a little bit of fill, okay? But what was happening here on the 4th, he destroyed the road. He brought in hundreds, and I would say hundreds and hundreds, and they were lined up, truck after truck, and ruined the road. And I'll go to the 5th on the west side of Walker Road. We had the same thing happen there. We repaired the road. It was a misfortune. There was an accident on Walker Road. The police directed the traffic. The heavy traffic went down there, all the steel carriers, and they ruined the road. And it was a mistake. It was fixed. We fixed it. Municipality fixed it. Then you turn around, and we have a resident down there that brings in fill. Well, he's not building a house. He's not building anything. He's probably the same thing, getting paid to bring this fill in. If any one of the councilors or any resident here wants to go down and look at the 5th today, the 5th, the west side of Walker Road is ruined again. So who has to pay for it? We do. So this is, I think this is what this bylaw is aimed at, to try to stop this, to stop the damage that's being done to our roads. It's costing taxpayers hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I really appreciate what administration's doing here. I don't know, it's going to be hard to police. I believe it is. It's going to be hard to police, but I really like to see a strong bond come out, okay? There should be a bond put up. If they're going to bring fill in, there should be a bond brought forward for any damages done to the roads. I strongly believe that. Councillor Verbeek.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the nature of those problems, but the question was specific. Does this mean that anybody on all these side roads and the concessions has to apply for a permit to bring in one truck that has more than 10 tons on an axle? Because that would be a big change. I mean, I understand about controlling, these landfill operations, rogue landfills, but if this just affects average homeowners just putting in a driveway, that would be pretty far-reaching.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we have two bylaws before us this evening. The second one relates more with respect to fill permitting and grading and that sort of thing. This does relate specifically to any heavy truck traffic as defined on any other roads other than those authorized routes. So this particular bylaw does have the potential of being wider in scope than just, relating to fill and movement operations.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Not really. Like a homeowners, we have a bunch of things we regularly do. We order furniture, we buy appliances. Are the trucks delivering appliances going to fall under this rule?
Through your worship, no, this is intended for those heavy trucks that are going to damage our roads. Right, so the intent would be to protect our roads. Yeah, there's special permits that are in there. There's requirements for that. Similar to anybody that's putting in a driveway, you need a permit. If you're building something where you're using that much concrete, more than likely you're getting a building permit anyways. So there's permitting in place for that. This would be to add to that permitting. So it's difficult to do the in-between. Let's go after somebody and nobody, and not these. So this, like most policies, or all are black and white. This is regulating heavy trucks in the town of Essex to protect our roads from damage, and that does encompass all heavy trucks.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. And I think once word's out there in the carrier industry, that people will realize that Essex has got this bylaw that, like if you're starting to move dirt around, I think the carriers themselves will keep it in the back of their mind. They know which communities have this kind of a bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Bowman.
If I may, how does this affect the farmer that has his own trucks to take his crop from the field to the elevators? And I mean, if he tows it behind a truck, it would fall under this. If he tows it behind his tractor, it wouldn't.
So with the fill permit bylaw would more or less addresses that because in most cases, it would be, you're speaking to, through the chair, you're speaking to agricultural products or agricultural topsoil dirt. There are exemptions in the Municipal Act for that activity. In the fill permit bylaw itself, there's exemptions for agricultural activities.
I was thinking more product that he's producing on the farm, so rather than bringing fill in. But there's also deliveries by local suppliers to your home or to the farm. Feed trucks, for example, would be coming in. Some of those could be considered a heavy truck. Others maybe not, but there's a sort of a gray line in a lot of those areas moving forward. So I'm not sure where you can draw that line.
And through the chair, and certainly the heavy truck bylaw right now, to your point, Councillor Bowman, may capture that in the way it's drafted right now. With the exemptions, we have noted some exemptions, but part of that is not specifically, along the lines of agricultural products themselves. So that, further to my comments, I was mostly, the exemption under the Municipal Act was mostly related to fill operations, not agricultural products.
Chris,
Through your worship, great discussion. You can see part of the reason why it took so long to get it out is we banged this around ourselves around the table, and all the what ifs and what about this and what about that came out, and that's why it was very difficult to tie it together. So that's why it's 2 readings tonight. What I would ask of council is all those questions, email us, and the next meeting we can have a discussion around those and exemptions and all these things that you think about when you talk to your residents and talk to them, and what about this, what about that. Let us know, and then we'll come back with a product that hopefully can work for everything, or maybe it doesn't. But we had a hard time with this. Nobody else has this, right, in terms of in the area. The enforcement's difficult. The range of vehicles is difficult. So by all means, please continue that discussion with us. If you think of something, text us, email us, and we'll come back with, if we need revisions, maybe the report follows then that summarizes all your discussion points, and then we can have a discussion at council for the next final reading.
Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm really excited and appreciative of the work that administration has done towards this. I just encountered a need for this a little over a week ago. I was hearing from actually a couple of residents about what the heck is all the truck traffic on our road all of a sudden, because we don't typically have truck traffic, and I'm not home during daylight hours, so I asked our CAO, who wasn't sure why there would be an increased truck traffic. I understand Norm and Al have been snooping around to find out why. If indeed this bylaw was, in place, they'd be able to say, hey, this person at such a place has got this permit. Now, of course, if we're able to enforce it, that would be a great thing, right? That's the big hurdle, but at least having it in place. But listening to other councilors tonight, I now have a little bit of reservation about, is this going to affect me every spring when I have, Danahers bring me out a big dump of compost, or when I do need to build my driveway back up with stone? How will this affect just, the homeowners that have 1 or 2 loads? I think that you're right on track, and this is past needing to be done, because I listened to the whole past council beat around all the damages being done to the roads by these trucks, and how can we, and the cost to the community. And so I definitely am grateful that it's going to be addressed, and I hope that we can enforce it, but I also don't want to, I want those questions about, single use for homeowners having a truck of stone delivered to beef up their drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think the intention is really good. I have similar concerns with the personal use, residential stuff. You're getting a roof done, they're bringing products. Sometimes there's 3, 4, different types of different people's shingles and lumber on there. So I see it being a concern. I also see what'll end up happening will be, we get it now as a surcharge to come from the city to the county, deliver something. They'll probably just add that right back on. So the residents will definitely be paying more. If there's some way we can exempt residents on one-time use for the year or something like that for particular deliveries, enforcing it, I think is going to be very difficult, but it's a step, I think. I mean, I think we've identified, again, a problem, and this is better than doing nothing about it.
Through your worship, just one other comment. The heavy truck bylaw is an old bylaw, right? So it's been on our books in terms of, since I've been here, there was just no permitting around it. So again, it gets into that, what teeth do we have, what teeth do we want to have, and what are we going to enforce, in our toolbox? So just wanted you guys to know.
I can just say one last thing. I think we got carried away here. I don't really think this is aimed at somebody delivering furniture or a load of gravel to your house or that. I think this is aimed at continuing use, truck after truck for fill, in weather conditions which are ruining our roads. And I think it's aimed at heavy trucks, especially steel haulers that decide that they go by GPS. Okay, they go to Atlas Tube, they come down Arnertown line, they use the GPS, the shortest route, okay, they don't know the area. If it's a new driver, they're going down the 4th or they're going down the 3rd. This is, I think, really this is what we're aiming to stop, okay, this type of traffic, okay, and fill, okay, there's no reason people should be bringing in fill, load after load after load, when they're not building. They're getting paid for it, plain and simple. I believe this is what this is aimed towards, so, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. 1799 is that second bylaw, a bylaw to provide for the regulation of the placing and or dumping of fill and alteration of grade and or removal of topsoil from land in the municipality. So I'm not going to go through quite an extensive summary as I did with the previous bylaw, but just a couple things to note. This is actually rather an enhancement of current bylaw 843 on the books. We have not changed substantially the form of the current bylaw. In many respects, 1799 as proposed tonight is identical or similar to bylaw 843 as far as the technical requirements. However, what we have done with this one, similar to 1790, is enhance the permit requirements and the security requirements. Old bylaw 843 did have permitting or did allow for a permitting, but it didn't really attach any extensive requirements for, or spell out what that permitting process was going to be. Same thing with security provisions, really didn't spell out what the requirements would be and what that process would be. So with this one, we're making the same effort as we're making in 1790. And once again, it's the permitting and the security requirement is to address and to try to cover either, the failure to carry out the work and the requirements under the bylaw or the issued permit, and to try to recoup or get reimbursement for any damages caused in carrying out that work, such as damages to roadway. So this is really what this proposed bylaw 1799 attempts to address and enhance. So, I mean, once again, subject to any questions from council, we were just looking similarly to have provisional passage of this tonight and obtain feedback as well.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions on this one first? I do have one question, Rob, to you. Mm-hmm. Is there any way of looking at this bylaw and denying any permit to bring in fill when they are not building? There is not?
No, I don't believe so, no. They wouldn't.
Yeah, can I?
Go ahead, Chris.
So through your worship, no, I mean, because people residents don't necessarily have to be building a home to be shaping their landscaping, to be digging ponds, to be building berms, to be doing the like. So it doesn't necessarily tie to whether or not you're building a house. It just ties to how you impact your neighbors, how you impact the drainage, how you impact the lay of the land. So indirectly, it takes care of, I believe, the intent of what you're looking for. You can't negatively impact your neighbors. You've got to get an engineering grade for the design, ultimately, of the lay of the land. So I think it takes care of the intent of what you're looking for, but not directly tied to house building, no.
Thank you. We need a motion? We need a motion? We need a motion to accept. Councillor Vandendel, a seconder, Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Thank you.
.3.3 is bylaw 1836, and that's to confirm the proceedings of this July 2nd meeting of council.
Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek, all in favor? Carried. I need a motion to adjourn. Move. Councillor Bjorkman and Councillor Verbeek, all in favor? Okay.